Assalamu alaikum. What are the opinions of Muslim youth on the critical issues in which society faces daily? Today we'll be talking about neurodiversity and faith. Just a disclaimer, this episode will delve into more heavy themes.
Let's start with the first question, guys. What problems do neurodiverse Muslims face concerning their faith?
I think to start with, should we say what neurodiversity is?
Yeah.
So obviously neurodiversity is the developmental conditions. It affects the brain. Some people classify them as disabilities, some people don't.
Like dyslexia,
yeah.
autism, ADHD, OCD.
Yeah, and then obviously there are others like the Tourette syndrome and Mears-Owen syndrome. But obviously, I think we'll be delving more into autism, ADHD, and OCD today.
So guys, we're going to first talk about autism, and let's first define autism. So autism is a neurological developmental condition which affects a person's ability to learn, communicate, and mainly interact with others. It is often characterized by patterns of behaviors and difficulties with social communication, and it's struggling to deal with change and mandatory actions or other points of views which can be elements of this learning differences. Did you know that 1 in 59 children are diagnosed with this, and over 700,000 people on the autism spectrum in the UK?
Yeah, I think autism is so interesting because it's such a wide spectrum.
Yeah.
In the media, people often see it as non-verbal, not being able to interact socially. I think Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory is definitely a big reason why people see a certain image of autism, but it's not like that. And obviously there are struggles that they'll face with their faith, such as, well, obviously the way both people with autism and ADHD learn and process things, it's different. And while this may be good for them, it can also be negative. Not negative, it can also be that they learn things not differently and it's difficult for them to understand it.
In what things, how does it affect faith?
Well, obviously in Islam, we're advised to seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave.
Yeah.
And Islam, it's a way of life. You have to learn about Islam to be able to practice Islam.
So it's a bit difficult for them in understanding and learning.
For
Understand
example,
difficult concepts, like obviously
prayer. Let's talk about prayer. It's a bigger struggle for Muslims with ADHD because it's their problems with their memory and focus mean that they often struggle to remember when to pray or what to focus during it. And it's mainly during, like, from the affections, you know, every Muslim struggles with focusing during their prayer, but for people with ADHD specifically, it can mean not even remembering the last line they've just recited or even ending their prayer with an intense doubt that they missed something. It's mainly stimmering during prayer.
I think this subject is quite a taboo because not a lot of people know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people don't realize that ADHD, autism, OCD, these things don't just affect your education.
Yeah.
They affect all the daily aspects of your life.
Yes.
Because with ADHD, it's a problem with the frontal lobe and the frontal cortex, which affects your executive function. Executive function just means doing things. It's a problem with doing things. Any task, people with ADHD struggle to do it. I think what I want to talk about the most though is OCD. Especially the subtype, scrupulosity.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Which is often referred to as religious OCD. This is the pathological guilt and anxiety about moral issues. And so everyone in Islam has waswas. They have the whispers from the shaitan. They have intrusive thoughts. They have these thoughts doubts about the actions that they've just done, whether their prayer was correct or whether their wudu was correct. And for the average Muslim, they'll ignore it, they'll move on, they'll seek forgiveness in Allah. They'll say, this is shaitan talking to me. But people with religious OCD, the anxiety and the guilt eat them up so much that they can't.
I've heard like stories where people are in the toilet and they're really worried about their wudu not being correct. They spend hours like trying to make sure it's
Redoing
correct.
it.
Yeah, and they'll spend hours saying the same line in prayer because they don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah, they're so scared.
And this isn't a part of Islam. In fact, Abu Hurairah reported that this Prophet ﷺ said, the religion of Islam is easy, and whoever makes the religion a rigor, it will overpower him. So follow a middle course. If you can't do this, do something near to it. And give glad tidings and seek help of Allah in the morning and at dusk and some part of the night. This is basically telling us don't focus too much on one part of the religion that you forget other parts of it.
Yes, yeah.
In fact, people with religious OCD do this. They fixate on a few rulings and a few rituals, and they say, I need to get this right. And then they neglect the others. And Islam is about moderation.
And it causes them a lot of stress.
Yeah, those other aspects of their faith that they find that they forget about, those are the ones that give them the hope and the reason to continue, because that's the beauty of Islam. And I think the problem is not that people are struggling with this, but the lack of awareness, the stigma about it, because the problems with mental health, the problems with neurodiversity, they're not mentioned explicitly in the Quran and Sunnah, but how to deal with them it is. And we take out those lessons from them, and we help us to deal with them in our lives. But if it's not spoken about in Muslim communities, if people don't even care to let the Muslim youth know you're not alone in this struggle, how will they know how to cope with it? How will they know how to progress? How will they know that this is a problem with how their brain is working differently, and this is something that there is a solution for?
So there needs to be more awareness around it.
Definitely needs to be more awareness. I think there needs to be more awareness in a lot of topics. There are other aspects of mental health that are seen as a taboo as well, such as depression.
Yeah, that is a big taboo, like many other topics. Depression in Islam is rarely spoken about and is seen as a sort of taboo again. However, Muslims, especially the Muslim youth, are struggling with the issue as feelings of hopelessness and despair, and these can lead to intrusive thoughts and wanting to give up. You see a lot of issues with like depression and mental health with a lot of Muslim youth nowadays because of exam stress and just like general pressure from school. So yeah, but what have you guys got to say on that?
Obviously, it is a sin in Islam, but it could be tackled if people just spoke about these issues generally.
Yeah, if you told Muslim youth, this is something that everyone is going to go through at some point in their life, and you're not alone, and there are places for you to talk about this without feel like you will be judged, then it would help them. I think another thing that I want to talk about, which I don't think people will actually consider this as even something that would make a difference to your faith, is impulsivity, and how people with ADHD struggle with that. Because it's like when you act like rashly and you just do something on an impulse. And often people see that as like, oh, I'm going to go out and I spend a bit too much, not what I was planning to do. Or, oh, I just do this. And they just see it as nothing to do with your faith. But say you impulsively sin, and that is to do with your ADHD, then the guilt that you feel after that, it's so intense. You're like, why did I do that? I know that was wrong. I recognized as I was doing that this is wrong.
You question yourself.
But you're still doing it because your brain is saying, do it. And obviously Muslims without neurodiversity struggle with these issues as well, but it's on an even higher level for people with neurodiversity. But it's not just all bad. Like people with autism, people with ADHD, they have innovation, they have creativity, they have determination. And these things can help them change the world for the better. It can help them teach more people about Islam. Say you have a special interest in fiqh, you'll learn all about it, you'll become a scholar, you'll teach more people, and you'll spread Islam. So yes, there are bad things.
But it's not all bad.
It's not all bad.
There's lots of good things about it.
I think what I want people from this episode, and I think you guys as well, hope I'm not talking for you, but just that awareness and talking about this, because if we don't talk about these issues, how will people know they exist?
I agree. There needs to be a lot of more conversations about more of the taboo subjects, because they're quite hidden. Yeah, I agree.
I think it's definitely something that people don't realize how many people it affects. Between 15 and 20% of the global population.
Yeah, even when I saw the statistics today, I was like, oh wow, I didn't even realise myself that it was affected this many people.
Yeah, if you're in a Muslim gathering, just a Muslim gathering, 2 out of 10 people in that gathering will have some form of neurodiversity. And they're struggling silently and from the background, and they're not getting the help that they need. There are websites and blogs and podcasts and things out there, like in Spirited Minds, that's one of them. But you have to go and search for them. You have to be interested in, and it's not just taught to us, and it needs to be taught to us.
100%.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode, and assalamu alaikum.